by Masha Galchenko, and Esgato, which is headed by Gary. So they're full-time superheroes.
Senator Hibba, follow-up question.
Second question is, regarding the change of Safe Team's designation from a bureau to an agency, do you go through the Safe Team itself and campus police and get their input on that, or whether like it makes any difference to them whether they are an agency or an
So in statutes, they classify them as a bureau safety. As practice, they are always classified as an agency. So last year, they were classified as an agency. All three of them shared the Agency of the Year award. And they're understood to be an agency because although they were UPD and the chief manager of safety actually works with the director of safety. The director of safety actually manages the day-to-day operations.
And third question is
Senator Hibba.
it's kind of not really related to this particular bill. Typically, how long does it take for bills, if we approve them or when we approve them, to get updated to the student government website?
Well, once the bill's passed through Senate, President Coco has 10 business days to sign it or veto it, and then once it's been signed, Pro Tem Board Bills, he submits it to IT, and that can take, I don't know, maybe up to 2 days or something. Pro Tem Board is better answer the question.
Yeah, so it could take 1 day or like a week. Usually statutory will require at least once a semester, but usually do it as fast as, because I know like a bunch of bills that come together, like bunch them together, so I just do it online.
Are there any other questions? Senator Miller.
My question is more of you said we can amend, correct?
Yeah, you can amend.
Just simple cleanup. I believe 1003. It's very small.
1003 is completely struck.
Okay, maybe it's 1002. It's about designating an appointee for
That's
SGA.
Down.
Down. There we go. So I move to amend 1002.5.9 to have the in parentheses CSR after the word committee. Just simple cleanup.
You don't really need a motion for that.
I have others. Where we struck out one director, one assistant director. I believe it's one. I'm not sure. Just the verbiage that I have a problem with. There. Okay. Just looking at how the sentence reads, the design of SGCS shall be director. The design of SGCS shall be assistant directors. So,
Well, to me, that makes perfectly clear sense. But if you would like to make a motion, feel free to. Senator Yolo, go ahead.
It pretty much just explains the positions and then assigning them. So I guess it's not really clear, but they change the positions in SGCS and that's what they prefer.
I'll just the striking of one student and one more seems unnecessary considering that sort of like a complete sentence.
Senator Miller, do you have a motion?
I'll move to unstrike one student and one or more assistant directors.
901.6.1 and 901.6.2.
Correct.
Are there any objections to Senator Miller's motion? Senator Hill. Are there any objections to Senator Miller's motion? Excuse me. Senator Yolo.
I think just leaving the option in case future things, because then we did that all bureaus and agencies, and that way it's up to future years. It's standard. So let's say next year, computer service wanted 2 co-directors. You don't have to go and change the language because then technically they wouldn't allow to hire 2 co-directors unless they wouldn't change all statutes. So just by leaving as director, student assistant directors, it leaves it broad so that the management of it is up to, I guess, a mix of the director director and the vice president.
Senator Yellow, is that an objection? Okay. Are there any other points, amendments, motions? Senator Vaughn,
Do we have to go to a third reading?
this is the third reading.
Can we vote?
If you so choose to, yeah.
Go ahead. Tell me what you want. Are you objecting to what I'm about to say?
No,
Don't have to say it.
I was just gonna try to beat you.
Oh, I motion to vote.
Senator Colon has motion to vote on SBS, excuse me. Okay. President Voorhees, please say your objection.
I have a small question.
You rescind, Senator Colon.
Only for you.
Alright, so you took out the director, the one in this one, but in the other agency you can take it out. Go up or down. Is that just, you just wanna leave it like that, or
Well, if you read,
minimal?
Yeah.
Okay. That was my question.
Senator Colon,
I reinstate. No?
yes. Are
Okay.
there any objections to Senator Colon's motion to vote on SBS 55-019? Seeing no objections, we're now in voting procedures. Please click one if you vote yes, two if you vote no, and three if you would like to abstain. Has everyone voted? With a vote count of 33 to 0 to 1, with me as the abstaining vote, this bill passes. The next item on the agenda is statutory legislation on second reading. The first bill is SBS 55-012, the Engineering Expo Removal Act. Do I see a motion to enter second reading? Senator Hassan. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, we are now in second reading. Once again, Senator Yoloa, you have the floor.
So the update specifics about grants account and remove engineer expo from statutes. Starting off, added the clause, sports club council is not eligible for travel. The reason for this is because they're restricted in their membership, and it's not fair for us to allocate to an organization that's restricted in its membership. 8.10.3, there shall be one grants account for travel grant, homecoming grant, and nutrition grant. And some clause in it says that the money from the other grants can only be used for travel after final allocations were made for the original grants. From the unallocated earlier, you saw that in order to get money from these accounts, we want to use it for more organizations. We got to go through a whole budget process. So this will make it so that there's a set way we have line items for each grant, and then after the allocations, if there's any money left, it can go straight to the travel account to be allocated. So this is an intuition grant. It's going to be in the other grants as well, but it says that the Senate Chair of Special Funding shall submit a recommendation for the grant amount of ASAR with an explanation. So this will allow for reasoning in future use for future years, so that there's reasoning behind the amounts. Right now I believe it's the job of the Senate President, but not every Senate President knows the balance of the accounts, how they're used, and then all of them are going to consult with the chair first, so this makes it a little easier. Just changing supermajority instead of 2/3, this is how we'll look at packages. Same thing for travel grant as in the recommendation. This changes the language to say that travel grants are due 25 business days prior to the departure date instead of travel date. Travel date can be anytime between we've got students request for 30-day travel, so that means as long as they turn it in before they leave, they're good, because it's before 25 days, so that's great. This just adds recommendation to hopefully grant. 810.8.4.1 just adds the word events to make it more clear that any homecoming event, not just homecoming itself, but the dance engineering expo is just cross out completely. And that's
Are there any questions? Points? Senator Blas.
I have a question. When is the expo thing comes out? Oh,
So after consulting with Randy and the engineering expo chair this year, we discussed the use of the grant and how it was being used. And we've gotten into problems of trying to keep track of everything that's bought, what it's being used for, is it being used for the grant specifically or anything else. And so because of some of the misuse of funds, and it was more appropriate because of the mission of Expo, which is essentially to show off what we got from the chair of the committee is it's supposed to show off what the engineers and the engineer organization has done throughout the year. And so rather than allocating for the specific grant, we figured it would be better use if they'd be putting it in their annual if it's something that they're building, because then they should be making it throughout the year, not specifically for an expo. And it also will help us. There's organizations that just request things to give away to kids and middle schoolers that come, and so this makes it so that it's more for students by allowing an annual budget.
Senator Colon.
Another point was that the engineering department itself has $25,000 to give to this expo, which basically is one of the reasons why Corey decided to strike the expo from this. They're going to get used. The money's going to be found somewhere through either annual or from the engineering clubs petitioning to the engineering department. So don't worry about the expo. It's not being hindered in any way.
Senator Yolo.
And crossing out the expo grant is not canceling the expo. The expo can still get funded through annual. It's just the grant itself through the organizations.
Points or questions? Senator Colon.
If there are no further points, can we vote or do I have to move into third reading?
So this is only a one chapter bill, so 2 readings is sufficient. So is that a motion to vote?
It was until Corey shook his head. So I'm
Okay.
going to no.
Senator Yolo.
In tabling the bill, the reason for it is because there's an accompanying bill that is going to ASARC right now. And so if they refuse to cross out engineer expo as well, then we have 2 conflicting bills. And so I would recommend waiting until the bill from ASARC comes around and passes.
Senator Colon.
Well, in that case, I motion to table the bill.
Is your motion to table the bill until the ASARC bill comes?
Yes.
Are there any objections to tabling this bill with the contingency that it will be back on the agenda the same week that the ASARC bill is on the agenda? Seeing none, this bill has been tabled. Next item on the agenda is procedural legislation on second reading. And our first bill is SBP 55-004, the Engineering Expo ROP removal. Do I see a motion under first reading? Senator Colon.
So moved.
Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, we are now in second reading. Excuse me. And Senator Yolo, you have the floor once again.
So this pretty much just has one line, and all it's doing is removing the engineering expo line from the RLP. The special funding chair shall allocate funds for the engineering. And it's just off of that one line. And this again, I would recommend to table until the ASAP comes around.
Senator Ramirez. Are there any objections to tabling this bill? Seeing none, this bill has been tabled until the ASARC bill passes. Next item on the agenda is statutory legislation on first reading. Our first bill is SBS 55-022, the Organized Removal and Extinguishment of Executive Restrictions Act, also known as the Order Act. Do I see a motion under first reading? Senator Guerra. Are there any objections to entering first reading? Seeing no objections, Senator Malanga.
Well, the bill is mine, the title can only be from one person. Fantastic, I know how it comes up with it. Alright, so to give a little background on this before I go into the bill itself, in December, I believe, was when they made the rule, the Supreme Court, it was in late November. So Attorney General Johnson raised the concern with the Judicial Review Panel, which is our Supreme Court, and their ability to basically declare whether the statutes we pass are constitutional or not. He raised the concern with that panel about whether or not one of our statutes, scroll down for me, whether or not 301.3.5 was constitutional or not. The Judicial Review Panel came back and said that it was unconstitutional because it violated the executive vesting clause in our Constitution. The executive vesting clause basically says that all executive powers are vested within the student body president himself. However, in their decision, what they said was that while the executive vesting clause can't be infringed upon, neither can the legislative vesting clause, which is just as powerful. So, likewise, the legislative vesting clause means that we as a student senate have all of the legislative power within student government. We are the only ones that can create statutes and have legislative proceedings. So in the decision, they use this exact wording, which is the part that I changed in this bill. Basically, they ruled that last sentence unconstitutional. Executive orders shall only be applicable, to the executive branch employee. So whether or not we cross that out, that is null and void because it's been ruled unconstitutional. And the part I've added is directly from their decision. Basically, it says executive orders shall not infringe on any inherent legislative or judicial proceedings, or be used to compel a senator or justice to vote in a certain manner. So what it says is that the decision doesn't change much. The student body president cannot make any executive order that would infringe upon our right to legislate as a student senate or to allocate money. So that is my bill. There's very little to it, but it certainly has a little bit more meaning.
Are there any questions? Any points that anyone would like to make?
I yield to Attorney General Johnson to allow him to.
Well, I didn't call him to represent me. Senator Johnson.
Yeah, my time.
Attorney General Johnson.
Is there anything anybody would like me to address? I really didn't.
I thought you might want to present yourself.
I really don't want to speak in turn.
Senator Sides.
I was just gonna say, I feel like this is one of those things that we kind of have already been doing, but we're just enumerating everything.
Any other points? Do I see a motion? Senator Miller. Are there any? Yes. Are there any objections to entering the second reading of this bill? Seeing no objections, we are now in the second reading. Senator Malanga, you have the floor. Senator Miller.
Move to disperse the second reading.
Are there any objections to dispersing the second reading of this bill?
Much appreciated.
Seeing no objections, the second reading has been dispersed. Senator Sides.
Motion as again.
Are there any objections to voting on SBS 55-022? Seeing no objections, we are now in voting procedures. Please click 1 to vote yes, 2 to vote no, and 3 to abstain. Has everyone voted? With a vote count of 29 to 0 to 3, with me as one of the abstaining votes, could the other two abstentions please state their abstentions for the record? Senator Hibba.
I was not present in the room most of the
Okay, and the other abstention was? Senator Yellow. Okay, thank you. With that, this bill passes. The next item on the agenda is SBS 55-023, the Appeal Act. Do I see a motion to enter first reading? Senator Cologne,
So moved.
are there any objections? Seeing none, I now yield the floor to Senator Vanek, as well as Attorney General Johnson. Questions?
All right, how we doing, everybody? This time I would love lots of sweeping adjournments because this is a pretty important bill in my opinion. But I'm going to let Senator Vanek tackle most of the legislation that we'll be reviewing today. But I just wanted to give you a preface of why I wrote this legislation. All of the JUICENEX members and myself included tried to arrange with Dr. Miller, Dr. Freeman, while he was still the Dean of Students, a process to make Supreme Court appeals fit some type of criteria. It says within our Constitution that all internal matters of the Supreme Court, it stops right there with internal matters, but external matters can be appealed to a respective board or designee. However, we've never been able to set any type of criteria for that. So throughout the summer and into the fall, we tried to arrange this with Dr. Freeman, and he canceled a lot of meetings or was unavailable after we tried to arrange meetings. So I kind of got the hint. And so what I decided to do was, well, instead of trying to tackle the criteria problem, how about we tackle a different problem within the same situation? And that problem, in my view, was transparency. When we talk about specifically the idea that I got my idea from the basis of how Esgato is our processor for public records requests. And so I said to myself, if we want to make this process to appealing to a dean or student rights and responsibilities more transparent, why don't we just have Esgato process it for us? And so I bounced the idea off Gary, because realistically, it's not going to happen very often. So maybe once, maybe twice a year at most. And then that way, all parties that are involved in the case itself will be able to be contacted. They'll give whatever testimony or statements that they have. And so I wrote up the piece of legislation with Senator Vanek because I was also trying to mentor Senator Vanek so that way she can, in the future, write lots of bills like Chairman Ulola, our illustrious pro tempore. And so after that, what I did was I presented my draft to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court loved it. They didn't really have any suggestions for me. I brought it to JUICENEX because the discussion happened there originally. They had some tweaks, and so after we tweaked it a little bit, we sent it to all of the relevant members. Took it to rules. Rules approved it with a few more tweaks, and now you'll be seeing it today. So I'm going to turn it over to Senator Vanek, but if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask.
Okay, like Johnson was saying, this is just to create an outline of like transparent process for when appeals are ruled to Supreme Court rulings. So the intent of this legislation is to outline a transparent process for appeals of rulings of the Student Supreme Court. 5.1. The Student Supreme Court is the final judicial authority within any case or controversy within student government. Any other external case or controversy may be appealed to its respective appellate board or designee. The director of Esgato shall determine who the respective appellate board or designee is by memorandum to JUICENEX. 5.2. The respective appellate board or designee shall determine if the matter is of an external nature and if they are the proper appellate board or designee. 5.2.1. If the original appellate board or designee determines it shall be sent to a more appropriate appellate board or designee, Esgato shall forward it to said appellate board or designee. 5.3. If a student wishes to appeal a ruling of the Student Supreme Court, they must submit their case to Esgato material. Esgato shall then timestamp the evidence statements from the appealing party. Esgato shall then contact the adverse parties and Chief Justice and inform them that the ruling has been appealed. They shall have 5 business days from their may also submit any evidence in or statement on behalf of the Supreme Court. No other parties may submit evidence in or statements. 505.3.1. If there are any dissenting opinions, the highest ranking justice on each opinion will have 5 business days to turn in any relevant evidence and or statements. 505.4. Once all evidence and statements are submitted to Ascado, Ascado will timestamp all evidence statements, forward the appeal evidence and statements to the respective appellate board or designee. 505.4.1. If all evidence and or statements are collected before the end of the 5 business days, Ascado may forward the appeal evidence and statements to the respective appellate board or designee prior to 5 business days. 505.5. The respective appellate board or designee shall inform Ascado of a decision, and Ascado shall release the decision to all parties in due sex within 2 business days of receiving it. 5.6. If a ruling of the student Supreme Court is overturned, the decision from the respective appellate board or designee shall take effect immediately.
Are there any questions? Or points? Senator Johnson.
This is for the air, I guess. Is there any, Attorney General Johnson hinted at a couple of things that you want us to kind of discuss. Do you want to go further elaborate some points that you want the Senator to talk about?
I wouldn't like to. Well, I mean, I would love to go over this bill very thoroughly because I've addressed this concern with several of the Senate members here today. I believe that this is sort of a time-sensitive bill, being that election season literally starts next week. I would like to make sure that this process is set in stone. That way, if anything were to happen, because in student government we like to prepare for worst-case scenario, that this process is already outlined. So essentially, if we just go by our old process, if we go by our old process, it's still going to lack integrity in the process. But if we put this in there, it's still doing the same thing, except now everyone knows about it. If that makes sense. But if there's any specific points, I'd love to talk about it.
Senator Hibba.
There's something that I noticed just now, actually. 505.4 and 505.4.1, they say that all evidence and statements are submitted. Once all evidence and statements are submitted, if all evidence and statements. I'm just getting the impression that the way it's phrased makes it seem like Escada will timestamp them only after all of them are brought in. I know that's not what the intention is, but for sake of clarification, maybe it could be replaced with once any or after any evidence or statements are submitted to Escada, Escada will timestamp them forward to the all that stuff.
Would you like to make a motion, Senator Hibba? Senator Colon.
Can we go to second reading so that can be made?
You make a motion.
I make a motion to enter second reading.
Is there any objections to entering the second reading of this bill? Seeing no objections, we are now in second reading. Senator Ahmed.
I move to disperse the reading.
Are there any objections to dispersing the second reading of this bill? Seeing no objections, the second reading has been dispersed. Senator Hibba, do you have a motion?
Yes, can you just go down to 505.4 and 505.4.1? On further review, it seems like the all is consistent with the forward the appeal for the forwarding of all the information to Escada, but the timestamping is something that would have to be on as the stuff comes in. So I would like to add an amendment as a subclause to 505.4, so it would be 505.4.2. It will read Escada. It would read Escada will timestamp. Will timestamp all evidence and statements as they are submitted to Escada.
Are there any objections to Senator Hibba's motion? Senator Colon.
Just a friendly amendment on semantics. Escalo will timestamp all evidence and what's that say? And statements, because I can read, as they are submitted. I would like to say to them. Escalo was already stated.
And I would also like to add, removing the timestamp of all evidence statements from 505.4 since it's included in 505.4.2.
It doesn't say timestamp. Okay, are there any objections to Senator Hibba's motion? Please say your objection.
I think the wording we put into the 505.4 without leaving the subclause, reading once any evidence and statements are submitted to Escalo, Escalo will timestamp evidence / statements as they are submitted to them. Instead of making yourself cause for confusion.
You accept his amendment, Senator Hibba.
I would like to see how it reads first.
Okay. Could you repeat, please?
Once any evidence and statements are submitted to Escalo, Escalo will timestamp all evidence / statements as they are submitted to them, received. And that there would skip through the subclause.
What about the rest of the sentence?
And the rest is fine.
It's, I mean,
And you can separate it into
okay, I understand what you're saying. Okay, do you accept his amendment?
I do not, because like this, it reads that Escalo will forward the appeal evidence and statements to the respective appellate or designee as each individual piece of evidence or statement comes in, when the nature of the bill or the intention of the bill appears to be that they would forward all this information after it's all been collected, so they forward it all at once. And I want them to timestamp everything as it comes in, but send it back forward all together.
Escalo will timestamp. Okay. So, okay. So, are there any objections to Senator Hibba's original motion, which scratches timestamp and adds 505.4.2? Seeing none? Just turn that read. Any questions, motions? Senator Ulloa.
So this is, I guess, more of a discussion point. As Mr. Johnson said, this bill is all going to be according to how you guys want to see it. If you guys want to see this process employed for the new election, I would highly advise passing it today, or failing it today if you disagree with it. And if you guys want to stick to what we have now and do this later and not have it ready for this election, then you guys can table it. But I would recommend having this, because although it doesn't give us the power of choosing the external problems, it gives us more of a fair way for, I guess, the defendant and the person. I mean, I guess both sides of the party getting their say in the matter instead of it being one-sided.
Senator Hibba.
I would like to move 505.4 to its current place. I would like to move 505.4.2 to 505.4 and move 505.4 and 505.4.1 down one rung to 505.5 and 505.5.1, because 505.4 both talk about Escalo submitting or forwarding the appeal, whereas this is something less, it's not the relevant, it's more about time spent.
Are there any objections to Senator Hibba's motion? Senator Colon.
I'm just not understanding why we need that clause to begin with, for the sole purpose that as I'm reading 505.4, as it has been written, from an outside party, because I wasn't really listening to the conversation, I think it's perfect the way it is. 505.4.2 just needs to be stricken. You're redundant and it's really annoying. For the semantics part, not the
That's your objection.
yes.
You send your motion.
I listened to the discussion.
Senator Ulloa.
I agree with Mr. Hiba that it would just make it more clear to have the timestamp in it as a separate clause instead of having it as a subclause, just so that we know for future reference that everything was turned in by a certain time and date, so when we throw it in, we make sure it follows the statutes.
Senator Hainline.
Okay, so I have an amendment for 505.43. Once any evidence and statements are submitted to Escada, Escada will timestamp all evidence and statements. And then period after that. Once Escada has received all evidence and statements, they will forward the appeal evidence and statements to the rest of the and then you can get rid of 505.4.
Are there any objections to Senator Hainline's motion? Senator Colon.
You put "and" instead of "any" in the very first sentence, where it says "will timestamp and evidence." Should be "any," correct?
Yeah, instead of evidence and statements, evidence slash statements. Once it's covered, just leave all evidence slash statements. For both of you.
Do you accept his amendment? Yes. Senator Hainline? Are there any objections? Senator Hiba.
Just one more friendly amendment. 505.4.1 to do the same thing for evidence and or statements to be consistent.
Do you accept his friendly amendment, Senator Hainline? Are there any objections to Senator Hainline's motion? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other points? Senator Ulloa.
If there's no more points in this bill, I'd like to vote.
Are there any objections to voting on this bill? Seeing no objections, there are now voting procedures. Please click 1 to vote yes, 2 to vote no, and 3 to abstain. Has everyone voted? With a vote count of 28 to 0 to 1, this bill passes. We'll now move on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Senator Colon.
The State of the Union address started at 9 o'clock. Everybody needs to find a reputable source to get summary reports of it, because we live in America and it's all about America, so go Bulls, go America.
Senator Johnson.
Go Bulls and go America. Thank you for saying that before I could. I just want to say
Senator Fontaine.
So I know that everybody sits on their phones the whole meetings, and that's totally cool. I do too. But can we make an effort to put our phones completely on silent because it's very distracting to hear people's phones vibrating or even going off like sound-wise during the meeting. So silent, it's a thing on all of our phones. Can we do it, please?
Attorney General Johnson.
Alright, this was brought to my attention from several senators during the meeting, but because it was such a contested conversation today, I will be launching an investigation into that club organization budget, just on some statutory evaluations. So pro tempore is ensure to give me the vote count.
Senator Hartman.
I recommend everybody to register for a dance marathon. It's a big deal, and it's for the kids. It's $20, but it's a lot of fun. 24 hours of dancing, and you'll be around friends and stuff. Do it on.
Senator Clark.
AOI is doing their Kick It In Plant Thing. I was wondering if anyone was interested in making a kickball team. Typically, they have a co-ed
Kickball?
division. It's $100 entrance fee. Okay.
Senator Sykes.
I was gonna say, yes, anyone.
Are there any more announcements? Okay, I'd like to make one final announcement. Either tomorrow or the day after, I'll be sending out all of the templates for all the different kinds of bills that we can write here in Senate. I would recommend that if you have any changes, anything you'd like to see from the student government, you ask either myself, Abdul, or anyone else on Senex, or even Attorney General Johnson, how to write a bill and ask questions. And look into doing that, because that's a skill that you should all learn how to do, especially if you're coming back next year as a senator. With that, are there any more announcements?
This is a great app.
No. Seeing no more announcements, we'll move into final roll call. Please click 1 to mark that you are present. Is everyone clicked in? With that, we have a final count of 28. Senator Fontaine.
Wait. I don't think I clicked in.
That's 2.
Stewie.
Just talk to Bill after.
Okay, cool.
Are there any objections to adjourning? Seeing no objections, the Senate is adjourned at 9:38 p.m.
I don't know if I clicked in. Oh, wait, I couldn't clean up the bathroom. He's so bad. Are you going back to JP? Yeah, I had like 50 last week.
I need my favorite Bengali person here. I'm so proud. You're not wearing stockings. Oh. Tao, কি অবস্থা?
No, you guys, my heart is gold. You guys are great. And you guys ruined it. You guys ruined my moment. How am I ever going to get this back?